a powerful angel who proclaimed in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and break its seals?" But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or look inside. And so I began to weep and weep because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look inside. But then one of the elders said to me, "Don't weep. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has emerged victorious so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals." Then, in between the throne and the 4 living creatures and among the elders, I saw a lamb standing as if it had been slain. It had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are God's 7 spirits. And he came forward and took the scroll from the right hand of the one seated on the throne. And when he took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each held a harp and gold bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they took up a new song, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals, because you were slain. And by your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe, language, people, and nation. You made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will rule on earth." Then I looked and I heard the sound of many angels surrounding the throne. They numbered in the millions, thousands upon thousands. And they said in a loud voice, "Worthy is the slaughtered lamb to receive power, wealth, wisdom, and might, and honor, and glory, and blessing." And I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea, and I heard everything everywhere say, "Blessing, honor, glory, and power belong to the one seated on the throne, to the Lamb, forever and always."
You may be seated. We'll now do the practice of Visio Divina, and we'll use the image that's behind me. And as you look at the picture, and as you think of the words that have already been read, what do you notice? The shapes, the colors, the light. Notice the detail in the foreground. What's in the background? Notice dimension and texture. Notice your reaction to this image. Close your eyes if you wish. What thoughts is this image raising? What questions? What feelings do you notice? Look at the image again. What could the things that you see or feel or think reveal about God and your life? What could the things that you heard from the passages reveal about God and your life? Now respond to God. Again, close your eyes if you wish. Silently take the words that came up, or the emotions, or the thoughts, or the questions, and bring them to God in prayer. Don't judge yourself. Just speak to God as you would a good friend. Speak to Him the words that come to mind, or the colors, or the emotion, or the question. Again, don't judge yourself. Speak to God as though He were your close friend. I'm going to close in prayer, but before I do, I want us to just rest. Nothing to say or nothing to do, just for a few seconds, but be still. God, you call us into connection with you. As we pay attention to the words that we hear and the things that we see, they all become an invitation. An invitation to be connected to you. And so I pray whatever words have been spoken to you in silence, or colors named, or questions asked, that Spirit, there would be a real sense of not only our awareness of you, but your awareness of us. Remind us consistently that we are welcome in your company, that you love us and that you are for us. Thank you that you are tuned to the things that have been spoken silently today. Amen.
Surprise, let's stand and sing. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide, the darkness deepens, Lord with me abide, when other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless abide with me. Thou my head in early youth did smile, and though rebellious and perverse meanwhile, thou hast not left me, though I've oft left thee. Unto the close, Lord, abide with me. I need thy presence every passing hour, but what thy grace can for the tempter's power, who like thyself my guide and stay can be, through cloud and sunshine abide with me. I fear no foe with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no weight and tears no bitterness. Where is thy sting, death? Where grave thy victory? I triumph still if thou abide with me. Come not in terrors as the King of kings, but kind and good with healing in thy wings. Tears for all woes, a heart for every plea. Come, friend of sinners, abide with me. Come, friend. Come, friend of sinners, abide with me.
This year you may be seated. As is probably obvious by the different practices that we've engaged in through the Visio Day, through the text that we've read, if you're unfamiliar with Good Friday, then the purpose of this event is to reflect specifically on Jesus' journey to the cross and then the eventual moment and event of the cross. Now we do this specific moment with these specific rhythms because we believe that at the very bottom of everything, the cross is the ultimate, supreme image of God revealed to the world. We believe that in the cross and in the moment of Jesus on the cross that we are seeing God's true nature, that we are seeing God's true work, that we are seeing how God operates in the world, how God acts towards us. The questions that Heather asked us at the very beginning, how do you see God? How does God work? And what does that mean for us? Are all reoriented and reshifted and reformed as we look at Jesus on the cross. Because who is God? Well, primarily, he is the one revealed on the cross. And how does God operate in the world? Primarily, how God operates on the cross. And what does that mean for us? Well, it means a lot. And on the one hand, like we're familiar with that idea, I think. We're familiar with talking about Jesus on the cross. We wear crosses. Crosses are a symbol of our faith. So there's this piece of the cross-centric nature of our theology and our faith and our understanding that is easy and really beautiful. But then there's this other side to the cross-centered nature of our faith that is very difficult because it is brutal. Because the cross presents us with an image that is horrendous, that is monstrous, that is horrible. It is an image that Paul will describe in 1 Corinthians 1:23 as a scandal or even foolishness. That this image, this message, this story, this picture of God presented on the cross, it is scandalous, it is offensive, it is foolish, it's hard to believe, it's hard to buy, it's hard to make sense of. But then Paul does this interesting thing in that same verse where he says that we preach Christ crucified, which is a scandal to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. And he says, but to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ is God's power and God's wisdom. And what is fascinating about that is that Paul does not say it is not confusing or scandalous or foolish. Doesn't say that it stops being those things, that it is no longer contradictory or difficult or brutal. He says, no, it is contradictory, it is brutal, it is terrible, it is a scandal, and at the very same time, it is God's power and God's wisdom. The cross is both a foolish scandal and the power and wisdom of God, and that is just a difficult thing to hold together. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you had one of these books as a kid, but it kind of reminds me of one of the magic eye tests from when I was a kid. I don't know if you could put that on the, sorry to confront you with this jarring image. But the point of these images, if you remember from the 90s, is to stare at them long enough and in the right way and through the right kind of perspective that an other image begins to emerge. Now, I'm colorblind, so I've literally never successfully completed one of these, which is very ableist of them. But the idea being that if you stare at this image long enough and in the right way and through the right lens, you'll begin to see a different image. The more you sit with it, the more you move it, the more you look through it, the more something else will begin to emerge. But not despite all the different blotches and swirls of color. Through the different swirls and blotches of color. And I think the same thing is true of the cross of Christ. That it is ugly and foolish and scandalous and difficult. And that is never stops being true of the cross. It will always be scandalous and difficult and hard and foolish and horrible to see. But as we sit with that difficulty and that brutality and that foolishness, the more we sit with it and the longer we look at it, and as we twist it in the right direction and begin to see through the horror of the cross, we actually begin to see another image. We first look through the cross, and I think for a lot of us what we see is a loss of power. And that is what happens in the cross. Jesus becomes a servant, empties himself of all strength and of all glory and of all power. That's what the scriptures say themselves. Paul in Philippians 2, verse 6 through 7 says, Jesus being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used for his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Now, we love that story at one level, but it doesn't actually make any sense to us in terms of how our culture or how our world or how the logic of our society operates. If you want to get something done, if you want to accomplish some purpose, you do not give up power. It's like staring at a magic eye. It's just an image that has no referent at first. Why would someone give up power to accomplish a purpose? Why would someone become less to save the world? Why would somebody give up glory in order to bring a new kingdom? But the longer that we look at that image, the more we see through a God who empties themselves, we begin to see a God who stoops to be with and near their people. A God who, like a parent, gets low to be with a child. And yes, in stooping, you empty yourself of privilege and of power and of security and the status that you hold. You empty yourself of everything that would stop you from being near someone. And yeah, that is powerlessness, but it is also nearness. So as we look at the weakness of the cross, that weakness does not dissipate. It does not go away. You don't see through the weakness and onto the other side of Jesus flexing with a sword. You still see the weakness, but what you see is also the depth of God's love for us. And it is that very weakness that Jesus assumes that reveals the depth of God's love for us. And as we look at the cross, I think another thing that we begin to see in Jesus' emptying and Jesus' stooping is a loss of control. We see Jesus give up control, and again, I think in our culture and in our society, nothing triggers us, maybe just personally, more than a loss of control. When something happens in our own life, we want to force it into compliance. We want to move to control, move to flex in order to make things work the way we want them to. This is what the ancient Near East writers accused Jesus of as they see him on the cross. In Matthew 27, you see the religious leaders say about Jesus, he saved others, but he can't save himself. If he's the king of Israel, let him come down now from the cross and we will believe him. If he would just come down, if he would just flex, if he would just coerce, if he would just use force to demonstrate his majesty or his power, we would believe him. He trusts in God, let him rescue him now if he wants to. There's something so offensive about Jesus on the cross because it is a moment where we see Jesus helpless, out of control. Helpless is like the magic eye. That's hard to see God helpless. Hard to see God take that posture or that position. Hard to see God give up control or lose control. Offensive, difficult. But as we sit with that image, as we look through that image, we see a God who, yes, is helpless. Because he stoops so far to actually be moved by us. On the cross, Jesus really suffers at our hands. Jesus genuinely takes what it is that we give to him. Jesus genuinely absorbs all of our hostility, all of our wrath, all of our violence. And we see that, and we, like the religious leaders, want to yell, just come off the cross, Jesus. But love cannot be coerced. Healing and hope and affection cannot be forced. So it is hard for us to understand, but as we sit with it and look at it, the helplessness of Jesus on the cross actually reveals how love works. It gives and gives until we are disarmed. And as we keep looking at this magic eye image of the cross, the thing that sticks out maybe most dramatically to us is that Jesus suffers at our hands, allows himself to be suffered by us until death. And so as we look at the cross, what we see is defeat. And again, that is not an image that we are all that comfortable with. We don't like when our heroes die, and if they do die, we really expect them to come back more powerful on the other side. But on the cross, Jesus does die. A terrible and horrendous death. And we even talk about, I think, in religious terms, as though it was a defeat. We see it as a defeat. Is Jesus losing? And that's true. But as we keep looking at the defeat of Jesus on the cross, as we look through this moment, we begin to see something different. One theologian, Greg Boyd, describes it really beautifully, writing, "The cross reveals that God's power is precisely God's loving willingness to be profoundly impacted by others and to suffer at the hands of others." In the defeat of Jesus, we see a kind of power, a kind of victory, a kind of work that is so contradictory to our own images. We see a God who stoops to the point of death, and that is the demonstration of their power, because it is the only kind of power that truly unmasks all of our false attempts at power and actually heals us. It's the only way to actually create space for true relationship. It is the only way to truly heal wounds and to create space for a new world to be born. So we look at the cross and we do see defeat. But if we keep looking, we see the power of love. This is why we enter into this story today. Give us a sense and time to stare into the magic eye test that is the cross. It's a moment to see the ugliness and how it actually reveals the depth, the work, and the power of God's love for us. It's why we've walked the stations. It's why we've done Visio Day. It's why we sing these songs. It's why we will continue to participate, because we need to re-see. But if we're honest, Missio, it is very hard for us to see through the magic eye of the cross. Because we have bought into so many other images of God, so many other images of God as control, or as force, or as violence, or as shame, or as judgment. And we take those images of God and we place them on Jesus on the cross, or we just place them over Jesus on the cross, or we kind of like box Jesus' cross in and put it over here in a corner, and all the other images were more dominant. So we need help. We need help to see God as God really is. The Apostle Paul tells us that we have not been left alone to this work. In Corinthians 2, verse 10, the Apostle Paul says that God, as a community, is actually at work helping us truly see who God is. Paul writes this: God has revealed these things to us through the Spirit. The Spirit searches everything, including the very depths of God. Who knows a person's depths except their own spirit that lives in them? In the same way, no one has known the depths of God except God's Spirit. And we have received God's Spirit so that we might know the things given to us by God. The context of this conversation is the crucifixion. How do we see God clearly? So, Missio, we need the Spirit's help to see God clearly. So I'm going to pray that the Spirit would continue to work in us to unwind our false images, and then we'll continue to worship together. And as you worship and as you enter in, would you continue to practice this Visio Day? But like your heart-level Visio Day of unpacking the images of God that you've absorbed from other places and seeing Christ on the cross as the supreme image of God. Missio, let's pray. Spirit of the living God, would you bear witness to Jesus, as you said you would? Would you reveal the true character of you to us? A character that's made known on the cross, but it is so difficult for us to get it in our head. It's so difficult for us to get it in our heart. It's so difficult for us to feel it, let alone believe it. So Spirit, today we ask that you take this image of you and press it all the way through us. So that how we see ourselves and how we see you and how we see one another might be totally redeemed by you on the cross. Spirit, we ask this in your name. Amen.
So I wrote a new song with this idea in mind, that in God's character we see kindness, gentleness, and goodness. So I invite you to try to follow along, and if you want to just let it wash over you, that's fine too. We come to you, fearing that truth condemns us. Show us that truth is one with love in you, the Word made flesh. I'll do that again. We come to you, fearing that truth condemns us. Show us that truth is one with love in you, the Word made flesh. So we seek you in the silence, even when we're undone. Remind us when you're with us, there's no shame to outrun. Your perfect love casts out our fear. Your invitation when we are weak, you're drawing near. No condemnation. You are gentle and good. We seek your face, your mercies are new every morning. When we've lost our way, you lead us home with grace, unending love. So we will seek you in the chaos, even when we're undone. Remind us that you'd leave the 99 just for one. Your perfect love casts out our fear. Your invitation when we are weak, you're drawing near. No condemnation. You are gentle and good. Your love keeps no records of our wrongs. Your love conquers every fear it faces. When we were still far off, you came running to us. Your love, your goodness never changes. Your love keeps no records of our wrongs. Your love conquers every fear it faces. When we were still far off, you came running to us. Your love, your goodness never changes. Your perfect love casts out our fear. Your invitation stand and sing one we all know. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. Sing as long as I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest nights. You are close like no other. And I've known you as a father, and I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, surrendered now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down and surrendered now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
Missio, as a unity, we're going to offer a prayer together. It's not a practice that we do very often, so we kept it very simple. Behind me, you will find a prayer that is written like a call and response. I will pray the first line. I'm inviting you, if you feel comfortable, to pray with me out loud the second line. We'll do this a few times, conclude, and then continue to worship together. So, Missy, would you pray with me? Spirit of Jesus, we confess the cross is a scandal that offends our expectations and violates our imaginations. Spirit, help us see. We confess it is easier to turn away and reject the humiliation of your love than to experience a love that so totally disarms us. Spirit, help us see. Spirit, you bear witness to the truth of Jesus. So today, would you circumvent our well-worn habits and inherited understandings? Spirit, help us see. Today, Spirit, would you open our hearts and our minds to know the depth of your love, the power of your work, and the hope of the cross? Spirit, help us see. Amen.
tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there